Present.
Ron Vaughn.
Present.
Brady Becker. Jenny David.
Here. Any additions or corrections to the agenda?
I would like to move ahead in new business. I'd like to move ahead or put Stevenson at the end so we can quickly get through this other. And in case it runs late, we're not, if you have to leave, or if you have to leave,
You'd like to
It's
move
running
7A
late.
down?
just 7A down.
Agreed. Agreed. Is there any other additions or corrections?
Now I'll make a motion to accept the agenda with correction.
We have a motion from Commissioner Scott,
Support.
support from Commissioner Serbrook to approve the agenda with the listed changes. All in favor say yes.
Yes.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 3A, review of minutes, February 24th, 2022, regular meeting minutes.
I reviewed those minutes and I'll make a motion to approve them as presented. Support.
We have a motion from Commissioner Scott with support from Commissioner Bond to approve the February 24th, 2022 regular meeting minutes. Any discussion on that? All in favor say yes.
Yes.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 3B, March 3rd, 2022, Committee of the Whole meeting minutes.
I also read those and I'll make a motion to accept them as presented.
We have a motion from Commissioner Scott,
Support.
support from Commissioner Serbrook to approve the March 3rd, 2022 Committee of the Whole meeting minutes. Any discussion on that? All in favor say yes.
Yes.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 3C, March 3rd, 2022, closed session meeting minutes.
I reviewed those minutes. Make a motion that we accept them as presented.
You read that
Well, second.
fast.
I read it fast.
You guys read fast.
I already signed off on mine.
I signed it and give it back to her.
Yep, I second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Vaughn with support from Commissioner Scott to approve the March 3rd, 2022 closed session meeting
Well,
minutes.
it's not close, but
All in
I
favor,
did not do that.
all in favor, say yes.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Just make sure the clerk gets those back. I will. Item 4, public comments. This is for agenda items only, 3 minutes. 1, state your name for the record. 2, speak only to the chairperson. 3, stand behind the podium when speaking. 4, limit comments to 3 minutes or fewer. 5, follow the direction of the chairperson. Is there any public comment on agenda items only in the room? Any public comment on the phone? No public comment on the phone? Item 5, we have correspondence from Grand Traverse County related to the opposition to Community Mental Health Authority legislation. E, Michigan Association of Municipal Clerks related to support for election administration. C, Muskegon County related to Black History Month. Those have been received and filed. Item 6, action on consent calendar.
I'd like to put B and C together and move to consent those.
I prefer to do them individual.
Pardon me?
I prefer to do them individually.
Okay, so we will
Okay.
have one. So we have 7B, resolution to approve purchase of audiovisual equipment. This resolution is sponsored by the Information Technology Director. Public meetings held throughout the year at the county annex building often requires audio/visual tools to efficiently accommodate public presentations. The Information Technology Director secured quotes for the purchase of equipment necessary to accommodate the needs of the annex building. The proposed resolution will authorize the purchase at a cost not to exceed $4,000 with funds transferred from the appropriations contingency line item.
Make a motion that the resolution be adopted as presented.
Motion from Commissioner Serbrook,
Or
support from Commissioner Vaughn. Discussion?
I think we pretty well covered it, committee of the whole, so.
I believe it.
No discussion? Roll call vote?
Ron Vaughn,
Yes.
Jenny David,
Yes.
Craig Scott,
Yes,
Mark Serbrook.
Yes.
Item 7C, resolution to approve zoning text amendment 01-22. This resolution is sponsored by the Planning and Zoning Administrator at a public hearing held on February 23rd, 2022. The Ogemaw County Planning Commission recommended approval of text amendment 01-22. The Michigan Zoning Enabling Act requires that amendments to the zoning ordinance must be approved by a majority vote of the members of the Board of Commissioners. Changes recommended by the Planning Commission will be incorporated into the zoning ordinance upon approval of this proposed resolution. Do we have a motion here?
I'll make a motion to pass the planning commission's text amendment.
We have a motion from Commissioner Scott. Do we have support? I'll support it. Discussion? Please.
Well, I read it over. I tend to disagree with some of the wording in there. I guess. What I'm seeing with the trailers and whatnot, a lot of it's a blight issue. And I think the townships need to be taking care of it themselves, not making us change anything.
And I've got to kick back on what efficiency, the tiny houses, as well as the trailer issue.
Well, first of all, the trailer issues, the only thing that got changed on
Who's the
that
dates?
was the dates in the year that
Right.
they can be used on a lot. That's the only thing that changed. Everything else has been in effect for 25 years. I know that during public comment, planning commission, there are so many people came to us and said, why do you have it this way? Because that's the way it's been for 25 years. You're debating something that's already there. And we weren't changing.
Well,
They
the way-
want-
the way I see the wording on it, it says recreational vehicles. Okay,
Is there a
to me, a
definition?
recreational vehicle is a boat.
Well, no,
Is there a definition? of
yeah,
recreational
you
vehicle?
go into the book and it's got a definition of what a recreational vehicle is. I don't have that in front of me. I don't have my zoning book with me. But anything referred to within it has a definition.
So I guess, Ron, you don't want change, because we have to have, you want to stick with the previous resolution? There's already one in effect. You don't like the updates? I just want to make sure I understand
Yeah, I
what you're
just
saying.
don't care for the update,
So you want it to continue with how it's been?
the way it was.
Because you said, because what I find at my townships is townships that are struggling with blight, which I agree with you 100%, are looking for the county for guidance and assistance. That's what I run into at my county or my township meetings is when
Well,
they're really struggling getting anywhere, have people complaining about blight issues, they're turning in looking for the counties.
But again, I think it's a township issue with the blight. The townships need to be taking care of it. They need to be hiring blight officers, and I know they're tough to come by. I know we've got the same problem in Hill Township where I live.
Mhm.
So,
They're hard to enforce.
and there needs to be something down there where they can enforce.
Okay. So I guess you just want the same one, you want the same one that's been in effect to stay in effect.
Yeah,
You don't like the date that's changed on the camping
right.
from
right.
April 1
Well,
to-
like I say, the where, according to Craig, when I read it as recreational vehicle, I read it where you can't park a recreational vehicle out in front of your house. Well, if you live on the lake, as far as I'm concerned, a recreational vehicle is anything. It's a motorboat, it's a canoe, it's a camper, it's four-wheelers, whatever.
But we're not
But
changing.
none of that's changed. In this one right here.
That's already there.
That hasn't changed.
Oh,
Right.
Am
yeah,
I right on that,
right.
Commissioner Scott?
You're absolutely right. Yeah, that's already there. So by you saying, I want it to remain like it was, then that rule is already there. That's what's going to be the rule.
But it's still, none of it's being enforced.
No, only enforced on complaint.
Yeah.
Mr. Veeder, can you come up? Perfect timing, sir. I guess there's some questions right now. We're to this resolution.
Okay.
And we've got two commissioners that have got some feedback from their townships. Do you guys have any questions for Ryan?
No, I don't.
So I guess there's some confusion that there's been minimal changes to this, and this has been what Commissioner Scott is saying, this has been in effect for 25 years.
Since the last revision was 25 years ago, we don't even know historically if that was there 25 years before that.
Correct.
You
Correct.
know, we just know that the last big revision was done in 97.
So it seems to be what happening is people are actually reading this and looking at this now that
Right.
and don't
Right.
like what's been there for 25 years.
Correct.
Right.
Yes.
And then they want to come and debate that. Well, okay, that's a conversation by itself. And we said that at the end of the last meeting that we would take a look at that, those kind of things.
At what?
See-
What exactly?
Look at whether, how long it could be used on a lot. Is it a lot compared to a parcel? Because right now, it doesn't matter if it's sitting on a lakefront lot that's 100 by 200, or it's on 160 acres. In the middle of 160 acres, the rule is the rule, you know? And we said that we'd take a look at, you know, highly compacted residential areas versus you own 10 acres and or bigger, or even 5 acres and bigger. We don't even know. It's just discussion. We'll have to discuss.
Has our legal team looked at this?
Question for Ryan.
I have not sent it over to them yet.
Is this something maybe that have we ever had a legal team take a look at this to make sure that we're in a state accordance as well as local?
It should be automatic. I don't know that that's been available to the department up
Right.
until the last couple of months.
Correct. I spoke to Tim for the first time, Tim Perone, for the first time Monday of this week. Wasn't in regards to that. But with the minor changes that have been to it, we're really not changing that. Part of the issues that we're trying to fix with that, number one is complaints, nuisance complaints,
Mhm.
and then people living in campers. I did receive word last week that now individuals are applying and are receiving homestead exemptions for living on their campers on their property, which I don't think they legally can do. But that's another question I have for him, which is going to cause a problem as well too. Probably those have been reserved for homeowners, property owners that live on their property for. more than
That's
6
a
months.
principal residence. That's why you get that.
Correct.
Right.
My next concern, are now we're gonna have registered voters voting from their campers.
Can we table this for now and have our legal team take a peek at this, just to make sure, since this is the first time it's been changed in 25 years, we can just make sure that they are okay with all of this? Are you guys okay with that?
Go to the table. Why don't we, Mr. Sternbrook's got probably some questions.
I asked him,
We'll
Basically.
talk to you about the,
I asked Commissioner Serbrook, did you have?
Mine,
He had nothing.
my big issues that I've gotten kickback on is the tiny houses.
and what's,
We're not in favor of them?
Not in favor of,
Was there a reasoning? Was there?
because of the size,
Okay,
period.
not the construction, the size.
I told them, I said they'd meet the same code as a bigger house, and they, no,
Okay.
nobody, of course, you only hear the naysayers,
Oh, yeah.
you know,
so
so.
I put a motion to table this. Do we had a motion with support.
Yeah, sure.
We need to vote on that first, correct? Or,
You can move to table and that's going to take precedent.
okay, I did move it to table. Is there any support on
I
that?
would support your motion to table this.
We have a motion with support to table the resolution to approve zoning text amendment 01-22. Any further discussion?
Can I add one quick comment?
Please.
Most municipalities are way more restrictive than we are. There are cities and villages that do not actually allow campers at all on the property unless they're in accessory buildings. So I don't see how this would be, from a legal standpoint, would be restricting anybody from their rights. The The Michigan Planning and Enabling Act allows us to specifically wording wise says in there that we can regulate the use of recreational vehicles.
I agree. I think it needs to be more restrictive, but my townships really struggle with, you know what townships, I've talked to you numerous times about the campers. They really struggle with
And a
this.
lot of those individuals, I'm not even sure if they're even looking at their deeds. There's probably deed restrictions on their deeds that don't allow them to have campers. And they're probably blatantly ignoring those as well too.
So I just think in case we do get kicked back on this, we want to make sure that legally we're okay.
Make sure you put that question right to the attorney when you call them, as well as the general review, but get an answer to your question.
Because we have them on retainer and this is part of the retainer fee,
Right.
correct?
Correct.
Okay,
I'll call him today.
roll call vote.
Jenny David,
Yes.
Craig Scott,
Oh,
no. Mark Serbrook,
Yes.
Ron Vaughn,
Yes.
So can we put this on the committee of the whole? Ryan, do you think you'll have more information by next week so we can have this on the committee of the whole? You have conversation?
Probably have it by the end of the day.
All right, well, it's a little quick for us.
next Wednesday.
So can we put it on the committee of the whole for next week? Thank you.
You're welcome.
Items D, claims. So we have claims for, and I believe I have the updated because there was an add-on. $142,955.05.
I had the opportunity to review claims and I would make a motion that we pay the claims in the amount.
We have a motion from Commissioner Serbrook,
Support.
support from Commissioner Vaughn. Discussion. Can you kind of give us a rundown on claims?
Wasn't
Commissioner Serbrook?
really anything that jumped out. There were some maintenance, software maintenance things. Otherwise, it wasn't really, and it jumped out. Brad and I reviewed them both together, actually, so.
I seen there was some more Foley in Mansfield.
Oh, yeah.
With that,
Now, they're handling two cases for us.
Okay.
That hopefully one of them is going to be done here like any minute. The other one could drag on for quite a while. It has to do with the sale of property and the surplus revenue that comes from that. And this is, so it's been going on for a few years.
Oh, that deal that originated out of Roscommon County?
There are a lot of cases that have been cited. Yes, the Fox case.
Yeah.
It actually
Yeah.
started in Oakland County over an $8 tax bill, but I digress.
That's great.
there was the furniture for the day treatment too. Is that completed? That was on there as well?
They, we do have to put gutter on the roof. Because the way the moisture is coming off from the roof, it lands right in front of the entrance door and freezes, and that's not a good scenario. So just one thing that until we got the building up, we didn't realize, but the rest of it, I believe they're actually using it now. I think they're in it.
And then I seen a Michigan State Police for $7,200 and a Michigan State membership for $2,400. What are those?
The state police one is the reporting program. That's a yearly maintenance fee.
Okay. There was two of them. What was a 72? Or what, $7,200? You recall that?
There was one for the sheriff's office. I think the other one's for the jail, if I'm not mistaken.
And then there was a vehicle repair for $1954.06. What was that for?
That was,
Was that building,
was-
building is on?
building and zoning, yeah, that vehicle's, if you read the recommended services, not only what they had done, but everything else that's wrong, it's basically gonna be a money pit. It is a money pit, and I think that there's a plan to replace that vehicle because there's just a ton of stuff that
You'll see
is
that.
wrong with it.
You'll
They
see-
put ball joints on it and control arms, I think it was, and brakes and rotors, and there was a lot of things.
This subject will be on the agenda next week at the committee of the whole meeting.
Yeah, it looks like that truck.
The one is for Michigan State Police Jail Service Equipment Maintenance Contract for $7,200.
Yep.
And then, what is that?
The program that stores all the data.
And then the Michigan State Police Road Millage Records System Membership Subscription for $2,400. That's what you were talking about?
Sheriff's office.
Yeah, there's
The other
one for the
one?
sheriff's office. And one for the jail.
Oh, okay. All right. And then I see our medical examiner that was the,
Quarterly.
yeah, 17,000, wasn't it?
Right, yeah.
Yes, it was.
That's an inside joke, that's all.
Okay. Any
On
further discussion?
on the cover sheet, it was $1,750.
That looks much better, didn't
That's
it?
what Brad and I said. We'd rather pay that than 7,000.
Any further discussion?
Question for IT. How do departments buy their toner? Through you or?
No, most of them are through Xerox. If they have a small printer, it could go through Office Central. I have to know more specifically which department you're talking about, but the Xeroxes are leased, so that includes the toner.
Oh, let's see. It's the last bill that got hooked on here.
Oh, from district court?
Yeah, from district court.
That was, they ordered supplies. They must have a different credit card than everybody else.
Well, I thought it said.
Amazon.
Yeah, Amazon. I thought it said toner.
And is that the last, I'm sorry. Is that the last one from Morris Construction for $29,000?
Yes. It is. It said final draw.
Do we have a date that's
Right here.
ready?
They're in it now.
Oh.
I don't think they're fully using it yet. There was
Is that
some
it?
issues with the offices, but counseling is going on and a couple other programs
I guess I wasn't aware of that.
just started, like, say even in the last week.
Anything else? Are you, Commissioner Scott, are you still looking?
Yeah, well, yeah, it is a toner cartridges, 2-pack and LaserJet Pro M402
District court.
426. They buy their own?
Correct.
Okay, well, bought it on Amazon. Power of a credit card. One of the 13 ways to kill a community, right?
Any other discussion?
Buy outside. Nope,
Roll call vote.
Craig Scott,
yes.
Mark Serbrook,
Yes.
Ron Vaughn,
Yes.
Jenny David.
Yes. Item 7A, Cynthia Scott, Stevenson and Company, PC related to fiscal year 2021 audit presentation. You've got the floor.
Oh, I thought you moved me to the end.
You're at the end.
You're at the end.
You're at the-
Of new business.
End of
The end of
new
new business.
Want me to grab the clicker?
I'll share the screen.
Will everybody on there see what we're seeing or not?
I don't want to make everyone dizzy, so I'm gonna let
Tom?
you handle the clicker today.
Tom, is everybody gonna see this? That's on TV?
I'm working on that right now.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Well, while he's getting that ready, I'm Cindy Scott. I'm a partner at Stevenson and Company. I have with me Nathan Miller. He is a manager in our East House office, and he kind of runs the show when I'm not here on site. We good to go?
The left. Point it more towards-
No, that one.
Yep.
Maybe.
Set up.
There.
Here, I'll do it for you.
All right, so you should all have the bound audit report as well as the thin single audit report. And then I did give each of you a printed copy of the PowerPoint that we're gonna go through. That way you have it. There's a lot of information in there, and so I want you to be able to take it with you in case you have questions. I'm gonna go through the PowerPoint. I will relay to what page we're talking about in the report, but I think it's much more valuable for me just to talk to you and talk you through what changed and what happened this year versus going line by line through a 100-some page document. So the first slide, or the next slide. It's going to show you the layout of the audit report. Think of that like a table of contents. It's going to look like if you were going through your bound audit report, that's the layout. First, we have the audit opinion letter. The opinion of the audit is the entire reason why we do what we do. It's not to issue a pretty report, but to say, is this information accurate and free of material misstatement? Can we rely on this information to make our management decisions? And yes, you can. We issued an unmodified opinion on these financial statements that they are accurate and free of material misstatement. Then beginning on page 3 of the bond report is the management's discussion and analysis. I do encourage you to read through that page by page. It's a recap of the year's activity, and it's just a really good way to understand what happened this year. It's more user-friendly and in layman's terms. When we get to the government-wide financial statements, which begin on page 12 of the bound report, these financial statements combine all of the funds of the county. They also include the component units of the county, which would be your road commission, building commission, land bank, and EDC. And it also incorporates any long-term activity that gets excluded from your governmental funds. So your land, your building, your equipment, any debt that you have, your net pension liability, which is huge. You can see on this first slide that your ending net pension liability at September 30th for your primary government, which would be the actual county funds, was $8,828,392. I cannot stress enough that this is an estimate. Actuaries at the state level come up with all of their assumptions of when someone's going to retire and when someone's going to pass away. They even have to estimate what they believe the rate of return will be for the next 40 years. So this is 100% an estimate. It will change from year to year, but it's also the largest liability on your book. So I think it's important to point out to you. For the OPEB liability, that's your other post-employment benefits. It's anything that goes to a retiree other than your pension. And in this case, this is referring to, is it life insurance or health insurance?
Health.
Health. So your OPEB liability at the end of the year was $618,827.
That's 612, by the way. That's 618.
Oh, I'm sorry, 618, yes.
No, in the report it's 612. Not a
Okay,
big difference.
so then for the component units, again, road commission, EDC, land bank, and drain commission. The ending net pension liability for them is $4,273,000. Ending OPEB liability is just under $400,000. So at the end of the day, when you incorporate all that activity together, the primary government still ends in the black, which is really a good thing. A lot of governments that I'm in with that net pension liability on these government-wide statements end up in a deficit, and you are not. You were at $5,231,988. The component units are at $36,894,568. So the next slide. Big changes from last year. If we're looking at your balance sheet, remember your balance sheet is a snapshot in time. It is looking at a specific date of what assets you hold and what liabilities you owe. And as of September 30th, your cash and investments were increased from a year ago by $3.5 million. Some of the big triggers that are causing that change is that delinquent taxes due from other governments and other receivables decreased almost $700,000. Your accounts payable and due to other governments increased about $110,000. That's mostly related to the juvenile center. You have a new road patrol millage, which brought in an additional $900,000 in revenue. And then there was a new ARPA grant that came in that brought in $2,040,000 in cash. You're going to see that when we talk about revenues, it only increased current year revenues by $621,000, but that's because you recognize it as you utilize it. And it was determined by the county to utilize $500,000 in the current year as revenue loss, and then to do that over the next 3 years as well. And then the additional $121,000 was for the juvenile center. The net pension liability, net of the related deferrals, increased about $690,000. So even though you're paying in, overall that liability went up. The OPEB liability also increased about $40,000, but then your long-term debt decreased $235,000 due to current year payments. For fixed asset additions, I did list those for you, just so you know what was capitalized this year. The Juvenile Day Treatment Center, the phone system, and 2 vehicles for the Sheriff's Department were considered construction in progress at the end of the year. They weren't fully done and implemented into service. Then there was a walk-in cooler at the jail, septic tank at the transit, the game refuge fence, HVAC system for the Sheriff's Department, a firewall, and then additional Sheriff's Department vehicles that were all capitalized. For revenues, and again, I'm looking at the big picture here, so it's all funds, looking at that government-wide, we're incorporating long-term activity. Total revenues increased just over $1 million. Some of the biggest changes were with your charges for services. They decreased about $83,000, and I list here those fluctuations. District court fees decreased $267,000, election revenues $70,000. Those were offset by the commissary revenue increasing almost $110,000. Out of county inmate increased $60,000, and the transfer tax and recording fees increased about $70,000. Your operating grants and capital grants only netted a change of $14,000, but you had some big fluctuations in there. The ARPA grant has revenue of $621,000. The transit had a CARES Flex grant that was new this year of $86,000. But then last year's COVID-related grants went away, and those were about $220,000 of a decrease. The probate grant revenue decreased $120,000, Homeland Security grant decreased $65,000, and the transit capital grants decreased $320,000. Again, as I mentioned before, you do have that new road patrol millage, which was about $900,000 of revenue, and your state revenue sharing increased $145,000. For expenses, big picture only increased about $28,000, but just like revenues, there's a lot of big things going on in between there. Homeland Security expenses decreased $140,000. I had just mentioned the revenues did as well. Those come in and go down together because it's typically items, not cash. Pro-rate childcare expenses decreased $175,000. Election rep related expenses decreased $65,000. The net pension liability and OPEB expenses decreased $195,000. Other payroll related expenses increased $255,000. The biggest chunk there is going to be retirement related. The general fund professional services increased about $100,000, but your institutional care expenses decreased $100,000. Commissary supplies increased $55,000. The purchases of computers and software costs increased about $40,000. Uniforms related to the road patrol fund increased $15,000. You had the Geospan Corporation costs of $60,000. Vehicle insurance increased about $30,000. Payments to other governments, which would be your external appropriations, increased about $25,000, and then various other small increases across the board. Any questions on any of that before I move on? A lot of information, which is why I wanted you to have a printed copy to take home. So then next, looking at the component units. This is really the only other place we'll mention those, and then we'll just focus really on the county. But the Drain Commission, they reduced their overall net position by $19,000 in the current year, mostly related to depreciation. The Road Commission increased their overall net position by almost $950,000. And you can see that revenues and expenses both increased. They just had a lot more projects going on this last year. The EDC increased their net position by $50,000, and that's related to new grants that they were able to bring in. And then the Land Bank had very little fluctuation, and they only had a change of $125. So then beginning on page 16 of the bond report are your fund financial statements. This is going to look more familiar to you. This is what you are budgeting in accordance with and the financials that you're looking at your meetings. So for the major governmental funds, a fund is considered major when it has a classification of accounts that is a certain threshold. It's high enough, like their assets are high enough to the county as a whole. So for governmental funds, your major funds are the general fund, the housing commission fund, and the new ARPA fund. For your enterprise funds, your business type funds, you have the transit, the tax umbrella, and then the 2019 DTRF fund. Those were the considered major. So when we look at the ending fund balances, next slide. Ending fund balances for the governmental funds. General fund ended the year at $216,762. If you remember last year it was at zero because we transferred in what we needed to make ends meet. You actually ended with a balance this year. So that's 2.3% of your current year expenditures. The rule of thumb on the auditor end is that we really like to try to see that percentage between 15 and 20. So we've got a ways to go, but there's been so much transition. You've got the ARPA funds that you'll be utilizing over the next few years. So I do think that that's a good sign that it did go up to 2.3%. The Housing Commission Fund ended the year at $79,874. 100% of those dollars are restricted. The ARPA fund ended the year at zero. You will see when you look at that fund that there was a large cash balance there, but that the dollars are considered unearned until you recognize them as part of either actual expenses or the revenue loss moving forward. And then for your other major governmental funds, you can see that there's an increase of just under $1 million. You have three funds that are making up the majority of that. Road Patrol had an increase of $300,000. Probate Childcare Fund had an increase of $400,000, and Commissary had an increase of $150,000. So then just a quick glance. This is just looking at the last 3 years of fund balances, and you can see the general fund is back to where it was 2 years ago. Housing Commission had very few fluctuations, but then the other governmental funds, that's where you've got the big jump. So looking at transfers, next slide. This is something that I prepared for you last year, and so I went ahead and included it again this year. But looking at the transfers into the general fund over the last 5 years, and you can see that your general fund did have an ending fund balance. It did increase, but so did the transfers. So I do want to point that out to you. Last year, the total transfers into the general fund were $611,667. This year, the transfers in were $1,260,969. Now, $500,000 of that was from the ARPA fund as the revenue loss. $10,000 came from the concealed weapons licensing fund, but then moving from the umbrella fund, tax umbrella, you moved over $750,969. I know that Commissioner Scott had asked me several years ago, what's the average growth in our DTRF funds and all of those delinquent tax revolving funds, what's our average growth? And so I've kind of tracked that. And so for the since 2015, your average growth is about 393,000. So I'm just pointing out to you that what you transferred over this year is almost 2 years worth of growth. So just keep that in mind, that that could not be a continued forever concept or the fund will be depleted. Enterprise funds. So now we're looking at your business type funds. And so for the transit, you ended the year at $1,017,183. That's an increase of $247,000. The tax umbrella decreased $715,000. That's directly related to what was transferred over to the general fund. The 2019 delinquent tax revolving fund is a new fund. So 100% of that ending balance is new. And then for your other non-major enterprise funds, there's a total net increase of $514,000. So building department, that's a new fund this year that was developed. The building fund ended with $130,000. So that is an increase. The tax diversion fund increased $150,000. The 2018 delinquent tax revolving fund and the 2020 delinquent tax revolving fund both increased $100,000 each. And the county park increased $30,000. So again, looking at just a graph of the last 3 years for those funds, you can see that the tax umbrella has gone down a little bit each year. Transit's going up each year and your other enterprise funds are going up. Any questions on that before we dig into just the general fund?
I mean, yeah, your general fund, your balance of $216,762 looks, as you said, last year it was nothing, but we move that $500,000 in there to get that
Correct.
$216,762.
Correct. And that's why I wanted to make sure I included the slide of the transfers, because it's important to know how much money was being moved around.
If it wasn't for that $500,000 transfer, we'd be below zero.
Correct. That's what I was
That's the real-
nicely getting at.
So now looking at the general fund alone, and we're looking at the revenue and expense, this is the last 3 years. And you can see that in 2019, the revenues were significantly lower than the expenses. And then in 2020, they were still lower, but we got them higher. And now this year, we actually got the revenues higher. This is including the transfers in, so that does skew the numbers. But one of the other things you've got going on is you do not have in the revenues or the expenses, the road patrol expenses anymore, or the building department, because those were moved to separate funds. So let's look at the revenues. So looking at your revenues based on type of revenue, again, it's over 3 years. You can see that property taxes have had slight increases each year. That's pretty standard. That's what I'm seeing across the board at all governments. For the federal grants, you can see that it took a dip this year compared to last year. That doesn't mean your federal revenues as a whole went down. They did not. But what was shown in the general fund has decreased. Last year, you had a large grant with Homeland Security. This year, it was much lower. And there were also some COVID grants recognized in the general fund a year ago. For the state grants, that went up. That's directly related to the state shared revenue increasing. Contributions from other governments stayed low, but you can see the drop in licenses and permits and charges for services. That drop is building and zoning and district court fees and election revenues, offset by out-of-county inmates going up and, or just that, I'm sorry. An out-of-county inmate went up 60,000. And then the other revenue and financing sources, the reason you see the hike there is directly related to the transfers in. So looking at a pie chart, this just shows you where your revenue is coming from, what's making up the majority of your dollars. Just under 60% are from property taxes, 12% from state grants and state shared revenue, just under 12% for other revenue and financing sources, which are those transfers in, 13.5% charges for services, 2% for federal revenue, and everything else is quite low. For expenses, I have 2 different ways to look at expenses in here. First is based on department, how it's categorized in your report. And you can see that general government went up. Well, you have a full year of your administrator this year, and you also have increased retirement expenses. So those are some of the biggest reasons that would trigger that to go up. Public safety went down. That's because you pulled the road patrol out. And remember, this is just looking at your general fund. The capital outlay from the general fund goes down because of the Homeland Security grant from last year. And then the operating transfers out did go up, and that was 85,000 more being transferred to probate and 34,000 more being transferred to friend of the court. So just looking at which departments, which areas, types of expenses are taking up our costs, 43.5% to general government, 32.79% to public safety, 11% is to transfers out, which would be to other departments, other funds. Almost 11% to health and welfare, less than 1% to community and economic development, public works, and then capital outlay. Now, the next way I like to look at expenses is based on what type of expense it is. Payroll to payroll, purchase service to purchase service. And for the payroll and related expenses, you can see it dropping down. That is the road patrol coming out, offset by increased retirement and having the administrator for the full year. Overall, when we look at all of your employees, the number of full-time equivalents across the board, you were down an average of 7 full-time equivalents. But there was also an average increase per employee of about 3.9% if we take everyone's salaries divided by total employees. Purchase services appear to be consistent, but like I mentioned before, you did have additional purchase services of $100,000 offset by reduced institutional care. Repairs and maintenance stayed pretty stable. Supplies, debt services and other expenses stable. Payments to other governments remained consistent with last year. And then the operating transfers out just a little bit of an increase for probate in front of the court. So when we look at how those expenses are made up, I usually, in a lot of governments, will see the salaries and wages closer to 75% and you're at 57%. But the reason for that is because you're supporting all these other departments and you're supporting all these other governments as well. So your operating transfers are what skew that number. So payments to other governments are just under 11%. Payments to other funds is just over 11%. Purchase services just under 11%. And then repairs, maintenance, outlay, supplies and debt services are both low. Any questions on that? So the next slide is just informational. You had requested me to put that in there a few years ago, so I went ahead and left it in there just informational. You can see that if you look at 17, 18, and 19, and then you compare it to 20 and 21, the numbers are greatly different. That's because last year the state changed how they're handling the probate care, child care fund, and how they're doing the reimbursements. And so revenues and expenses have both decreased accordingly. So you can see them going down.
Wasn't there COVID effects too?
I don't believe, I guess I'd have to talk to Michael LaFave, but I don't believe COVID is why they changed it. I think they just revamped their system of how they
Might have
wanted.
been, but I'm just saying that I think there's an effect on expenses of childcare because of COVID.
I can't speak to that.
Okay.
I don't know.
Okay. That's fine.
So then the next is the jail revenue. And when we look at the cost per prisoner per day, the average inmate cost per day for 2021 was $67.99. You can see that across for the last few years. I did compare, the most recent I could find on Roscommon was 2020. And in 2020, Roscommon's cost per day was $81.14. Questions on the numbers before we talk about the footnotes? So then beginning on page 30 are your footnotes. This gives you the accounting policies of the county, and it talks about, gives you a little bit more meat behind the numbers in the front. And I just want to touch on a few of them that I think are important. First, change in accounting principle, and this would be page 41 of the report. This year we had to implement GASB 84, which is fiduciary activities. So when you look at your fiduciary funds that you would have seen in the previous year, there would have been a lot more activity, where now a lot of that activity had to get moved into the general fund or other related fund. And it changed the whole definitions of what could be separated as a custodial fund and what had to be part of your governmental fund. So there was a lot of work done behind the scenes on that. So that was implemented this year in these financial statements. And then next year, GASB 87 will be required to be implemented. GASB 87 is going to be a biggie. It's related to leases. It eliminates the concept of having an operating lease or a capital lease, which one you capitalize and record on your books and the other is just a disclosure. Now for any contracts that are for more than a year or can be extended for more than a year that are for using something, that will have to be recorded as an asset and a liability, excuse me, based on how long you're going to have it. You'll have a right to use asset and a right to use liability. So there'll be a lot of calculations involved with that on how to amortize it, what the interest is, and so on. So essentially over the next year, the homework assignment is just to think about what type of contracts do we already have out there that would fit this bill? Or as you go into a contract, as you enter into some sort of lease agreement, does it fit this bill? Because this GASB is required to be implemented retroactively as if it had always been in effect. Page 65, commitments and contingencies. There are 3 of those that are disclosed. One just relates to having pending litigation. The outcome is unknown. That's in there every year. Next is the board committed to purchase a phone system through Cisco. And so the details of that approval are included because it happened before the end of the year. It was not completed as of September 30th. And then the last is with Jack Morris Construction related to the juvenile day treatment facility. There are 4 prior period adjustments, and those are listed out on page 66. The first is for adjusting transit grant closeouts. This is in there every year. Every year, the state will go back to previous grants and make adjustments and close them out. And so those have to get retroactively stated. The second prior period adjustment is the GASB 84 implementation that I just talked about. The third was that the county closed out all the old delinquent tax revolving funds from 2011 to 2017 and closed them into the tax umbrella. So that's another one. And then the fourth was separating out the building department out of the general funds. Finally, on page 67 is a subsequent event that the board approved after the end of the fiscal year, but before the issuance of the audit report, and that was to authorize the issuance of refunding bonds not to exceed 5 million, with the municipal advisor and bond counsel being Baker Tilly and Dickinson Wright.
When we closed out those BTRF funds, those historical ones, how does that show?
Basically, it takes away, because it was really just a balance sheet item. So you had cash and receivables, and then you had a fund balance. And so the cash and receivables and the fund balance came out of each of those individual funds and increased your tax umbrella.
Okay.
So there's higher cash, higher receivables, and a higher fund balance in the tax umbrella.
Okay.
Page 70 begins the required supplementary information. Only thing here I'm wanting to point out is, as I mentioned before, that net pension liability is an estimate. So when we look at how funded are you, if we take what the state is holding in trust for your MERS compared to what they think you're going to have to pay from now until all of the employees pass away, how much are you funded? And as of September 30th, you were 73% funded. Last year, it was 72% funded. So you did go up 1%, that's good. For the OPEB side, though, there is no actual cash held in trust, so you are not funded at all. For budget to actual, we're required to look at where did you start the year, where did you end the year, and then what actually happened. And rule of thumb is the state wants you to remain within 5% of your budget. And you did on both revenues and expenses. You were 1.47% of a variance on revenues, 2.24% on expenses. So that's great. But one thing you're going to notice when you look at this, and we're going to talk about it in the management letter, is that the original budget and the final budget did not change this year.
How? Why?
When we look at what's on the county website, as well as what was in the board packets to approve, the final budget matches the original budget perfectly, and that's what's in the BSNA system. I know that the board was communicating on things, and I know we saw different resolutions passed. So you'll see in our management letter, our recommendation is that those resolutions and decisions that are made get incorporated into your actual software and into the budget on the website.
Who's going to be making those adjustments?
We've actually implemented that already. So
Perfect.
it's in place.
So who's doing that?
Primarily, it's happening, general ledgers. That's gonna be clerk and treasurer's office that do the actual inputting, if you will. You just passed a resolution last meeting to adjust the budget. So that's
Right.
where you're gonna see that difference.
So there's not an adjustment after each resolution that we passed where their monies are spent. There's not, as those monies are spent, there's not a change into the budget.
That's why we do the quarterly adjustments. So we capture them all, you see them all at once, and that's when we do them.
So again, it's just going to be quarterly. It's not going to be as we
Right.
pass.
But when you pass a resolution like the one that was on the agenda for this meeting, where we're moving money from that contingency
Right.
line over to IT, we keep note of that. So I'm keeping a running tally. I know what's in that contingency line, so that when we do make that adjustment, if something happens between now and then, we're not going to overspend that line.
Because I would think with that new software, it would be a pretty
We could
easy.
do it every
to do.
every other week if we wanted to. But this just gives the board the opportunity to see the bulk of it and formally say, yes, we agree. But you're right. And in fact, in the resolution, we often write in there that you're authorizing the movement then.
So I would have thought that right. I don't know how it works. I would have thought that then it would have happened when the bill
Yeah,
comes or we pay or.
It certainly could, but just to keep our sanity, it's kind of nice to see this done quarterly.
Quarterly?
You see the movement, and if there are, errors, we've got another quarterly adjustment that comes up that we can fix it. But it just gives us the ability now to see, yes, we've taken everything, we've caught everything we've done and moved it. And of course, you'll also see when there are changes in expenses and revenue that come in, a grant comes in we didn't know about, okay? So you'll see that now in the quarterly being incorporated into the revenue. And you'll see it. I mean, it will be there. Very easy to track that way. And then, of course, you will see on the budget reports that come through, you'll have a column in there that'll have the original budget. And these are the ones you see every other week. And you'll have one with the adjusted budget, and then you'll have the activity as well. So you'll be able to track all that literally in real time. We just won't make the formal move until the quarterly adjustment comes up.
When we first built this 2021 budget, we built this and approved it in 2020.
Right.
And that was before the election for that other millage. Did we, I don't remember, but did we build the 2021 budget with the assumption that that millage was coming?
No, we made an adjustment.
So
So mid-year, we did
How
that.
can
the
that-
original budget would have to be different than this number then.
Well, like
Because the
like
final
Cindy
budget
said,
had an increase, a huge increase.
right, but like Cindy said, the way it was,
It never made it over to it.
well, the way it was tracked throughout the year, it just automatically changed that original budget number 2, I assume. And remember, this is the transition year from the Pontum over to the BSNA, so that may be playing into it too. But bottom line being, we've made the adjustment to our processes now. You won't see those numbers equal when we do the 22 budget or audit.
You shouldn't.
Right, it shouldn't.
Yeah, I think, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think what you're saying is, this is what the software spit out for you.
Correct,
Or
and we did match it
21.
against what's on the website, and that's why we're going, "Ew." I can see
Say, how
the
about that?
conversations happening. I know the conversations are happening. I know you're looking at the activity. We just need to make sure the software follows suit. It sounds like that you've already put steps in place to do that.
And like I said, you'll see that when you see those budget reports that get posted on the Google Drive. You'll see those columns on there, and you'll be able to see literally in real time as you receive the reports.
So who's making these adjustments?
They're all happening as part of the normal day-to-day accounting in the clerk's office and treasurer's office. So like when you see claims, those are being entered. Then there are the other bills that come in, the utility bills and so on, as those are entered. It's all being caught into the system. It's just on a day-to-day activity.
Anything else, commissioners?
Clear as mud on that.
Okay, page 76 starts the other information in your report, combining fund information. So if you want to dig down to actually look at a specific fund of the county and look at their detail, that's not a major fund, that would begin on page 76. You have your component unit information in there, and then you also have the required public transit statements that go to NDOT. Next, the single audit, that is the small bound report that you have. A single audit is required when you spend more than $750,000 of federal revenue in your fiscal year. You have this year federal expenditures of $1,759,952. We're required to test 40% of that, have coverage of at least 40%, and we were able to cover 59.7% by testing the transit formula grants, the bus and bus facilities grant, and the coronavirus relief local grants program. So that's the ARPA grant. I'm pleased to say that in the testing of your federal revenues, we did not have any compliance issues and no findings to report there at all.
I don't remember having problems with them before, did we?
We haven't had, I don't think, findings in your federal dollars in quite some time.
Okay.
So then the management letter. The management letter is made up of 2 appendices. The first appendix is the required communication. Significant audit findings, which what this is talking about are there any significant estimates and are there any changes to your accounting policies? Yes, GASB 84 was implemented this year and the net pension liability and OPEB liabilities are estimates. We're putting it out there again in writing to make sure that that's been communicated. Were there difficulties encountered this year? Yes, this was quite the year for you guys of transition. You had a lot of transition in staffing, you had a transition in software, you had a transition with converting your chart of accounts. So there were a lot of challenges, but I am excited with where we ended the year and I'm excited to see where this next year takes you. Corrected and uncorrected misstatements. All of the material misstatements were corrected, so there are no remaining materially uncorrected misstatements. There were no disagreements with management. Management provided representation to us at the end of the audit saying that everything that they gave us was accurate to the best of their knowledge. They're not withholding any information. We did include a statement in here and required that we were aware of consultations with other auditors related to various consulting, GASB 84, the chart of accounts conversion, cash account balancing, ARPA funds. So we do acknowledge that there was consultations done. And then there are no other issues or matters outside of Appendix 2. So then Appendix 2 is our area of making recommendations for compliance issues, internal control issues, and so on. And if you can recall from previous years, there's 3 levels of management comments. The first is a material weakness. By definition, a material weakness is something that is reasonably possible. Something could go wrong. It doesn't mean that it is, but it's reasonably possible. And if it did go wrong, it's possible that it could be material to the financial statements. So we did have 2 material weaknesses that were required to disclose to you. The first is financial statement preparation controls. I've talked about this many times, but I think it's important to state it again. This is a disclaimer to say that because of the number of journal entries that had to be posted during the audit, there is a risk that if we missed something, you might not catch it and that your financial statements would be misstated. So to state it otherwise, if we would have prepared the financial statements with the original trial balance we received, it would have been materially misstated. Now, this comment is in almost every single governmental audit that we do. And when we report it to the state doesn't want to know about it. They'll say, are there any material weaknesses other than financial statement preparation? Because they don't care. But I think it's still very important to disclose to you, that's what that's there for. These are your financial statements. Management accepted them and took ownership of them. We are auditing them and giving an opinion on them. The second material weakness was with bank reconciliations. We talked last year that at some point in 2020, bank reconciliations fell behind and sometime at the very beginning of the year, at the very end of the year, we had some issues with them being done timely. But then this year with the software conversion and changing of the guards, it just became a real challenge of trying to pinpoint that bank reconciliation. And I know the treasurer's office worked very hard at that. They worked with a few different CPAs to try to get things reconciled. As of the end of the fiscal year, on paper, an adjustment was posted to give them a clean slate moving forward, but that adjustment was material. So that's why we do have to show that the bank reconciliation issue was a material weakness during the year. But I'm excited for 22 to see now if we're able to maintain a balanced statement.
Was there an amount on that?
71,475.
It wasn't 71,000 what?
475.
What does that mean exactly?
It means that there was the general ledger, and we got to realize this is your common cash that covers every single fund. So it's not even one fund specific, but the common cash bank reconciliation compared to what the bank statement said you had at September 30th was off 71,475. The bank statement was lower by 71,475. So an adjustment had to be posted to get cash back to a correct beginning point. So that way they could focus on let's make it correct moving forward. Let's start October 1st, 2021 and have a correct bank rec that we can continue to keep correct moving forward.
And I don't recall from last year or the previous 2 years, is that number more or less?
As of September 30th, 2020, the bank rec was off 5,883. But again, new software. Could something have erred in conversion? I don't know. I think what the question comes down to, and this was the conversation that Tim and Karen and I had at length, was do you clean the slate and start fresh, or do you continue to put dollars into trying to find it and you may not?
Didn't we have the other audit, didn't another auditor come in? Didn't we pay money? Is this part of what they really looked into?
Yes, it is.
And we're still out of balance, $71,000?
That's what we're being told.
I believe they thought you were in balance, because when they left, they told us that it was within 6,000, which the year prior was 5,883. So I think they thought they got back to that spot. But during the audit, we found multiple entries where cash was booked twice, revenue was booked twice, that had to be corrected.
We didn't find 71,000 in the drawer or something.
No,
Oh, okay. Oh,
That's a big number. I guess, Tim, what's your thoughts on that? I don't know.
Not an area that I've,
a lot of it was double booked and stuff.
that was the biggest issue that we found that made it where they thought they were in balance, they being the CPA firm thought it was in balance, is what we found the biggest majority was double bookings of revenue, where it hit cash and it hit receivables and it hit revenue twice, but the cash wasn't in there yet. It was a receivable. It didn't come in until October, November, and they were pretending like the cash came in September.
What's your guys' thoughts on that? Any?
No, it sounds like it's being cured.
I was gonna say, as long as it's getting straightened
How is
out.
it being cured? We're moving forward. We are, but you have $71,000 it's not accountable for.
I think we're a lot of this work is being done over 2 fiscal years too, isn't it? Is it not?
Well, the 71,000 would have it, unless something erred on conversion, it would be from this fiscal year, except for the 6,000 that you started the year with. So let's say we're talking $65,000. Essentially, you have expenses being overstated or revenue being understated in total by 65,000 to make cash correct. The dilemma you have is, I know that the county has already paid quite a bit of money to try to get this reconciled, and it didn't work. So at some point, I think you have to decide how much more do we want to invest to chase this, or do we start fresh? We recognize that there was a lot of stuff going on. We're going to start fresh and keep it clean.
How much of this is a software changeover issue?
Shouldn't be any.
It
Well, I
could be
mean-
zero. I don't know.
I don't know. Did somebody
We don't
book it in one software and not the other? And then it was, or both, and it was combined and thought we got twice as much?
And I don't understand all
This is
this.
basically what we're saying, we thought we had this money and we didn't.
Correct.
And it would. But we're still working on it. Still got Tim, we still got Maynard, Costerman working on it.
this is one that's been overseen by the treasurer. I think she'd be better qualified to answer the question than I am. Yes, Maynard's still hanging around, but I don't know to what extent.
That'd be fine. Gonna get to that point.
Karen?
Karen Pikolowski, your Ogemaw County Treasurer, and yes, this is a huge number. It is a huge write-off, but it is complicated by a software conversion, a chart of accounts conversion, and previous staff members not doing their job, period. People not receiving money in properly, posting it twice, posting it months down the road instead of the day it was received.
Okay.
Sorting through this has been like a needle in a haystack. Yes, we hired an external firm to come in and assist. It should speak volumes to you as a board that 2 professional accounting firms have worked to this resolve, and we still have a $71,000 write-off. That should be a huge red flag to you of how bad of a situation I walked into as a new administrator in office. I continue to work with Maynard to resolve the issue and to sort out the software conversion issues. During the interim of all of this happening, the employee assigned to my tasks from Maynard left their firm. They were so short-staffed that the principal of the accounting firm was the one on site doing the field work. And it was 1 or 2 days a month that was committed to me to resolve the issues.
That's,
Not enough time to solve the problem.
that's the internal, that's the other firm that we handled
Yes,
or hired?
Maynard Castarian. They were short-staffed and did not commit to me the time that was needed to resolve the issues.
No, we didn't hear that when we got updates on what they did or didn't do it. Did I miss something? I didn't hear any of those complaints.
I have communicated regularly with Tim all along the process. How that is communicated to you, I don't know, because none of you stop into my office to talk to me about it. So
Well, we don't know if there's a problem. How do we know to ask the question?
again, I communicate with Tim on a regular, almost daily, weekly basis.
I had
to
no
keep him
idea.
informed. So
I got
Maynard Castarian has hired new staff. They have a new member that they're going to be assigning to me in April. I am hopeful that we can resolve the remaining issues of the software conversion and the checkbook reconciliation issues.
So Karen, I'm sorry, what do you recommend us doing with this $71,000 that's missing? Do you recommend, from a treasurer standpoint, do you
Well-
recommend moving forward? Do you recommend trying to find out? Again, do you recommend moving forward, trying to find out what happened? I mean, could this be worst case scenario embezzlement? Could this be?
No, because we had an internal audit that resolved the fact that from what they told us, there was no embezzlement. We were informed, Tim and I were informed from our audit team, they had a forensic specialist that reviewed information and assured us that there was no embezzlement that took place.
Cindy, you're the same,
Certified fraud examiner.
so can you stand here and say the exact same thing?
I did not see the report you're referring to. I don't know what testing they did, so I cannot say that because I did not see it or do it.
Okay, from your standpoint, you did part of this audit and came up with this number. Can you?
From my standpoint, I think you have 3 options. I think, could there be some fraud concern? Absolutely. Anytime you have a bank reconciliation that's not reconciling, that is a concern.
For
So-
years, it was not reconciled.
So I
Oh, right, but never to
Yes.
this amount. Correct? Has it ever been since you've been
No.
auditing this amount? Last year you said 5,000 or 6,000?
5,883.
Okay,
However, I'm going to state again, there was staffing in the office not performing their daily duties on the job. Cindy can attest to it. There were double receipts. There were receipts not receipted in for months after the money was received. There was some that wasn't receipted in at all. There's an auditor that can reiterate what I'm saying to you as fact.
So the fact is, it could be double booked. So in
Or
reality,
not booked at all.
you don't, it's not, I mean, it's showing that it's lost revenue, but it's really not lost.
but that should have been part of the bank reconciliations that have now been reviewed twice.
Right.
I mean, so the double part, I don't understand. The missed maybe, but
I think your likelihood here is either a fraud concern, which I'm not saying, please don't misunderstand that. I'm not saying that there is. I'm saying, is that a possibility in this type of situation? Absolutely. Or I think the likelihood is with all the credit card activity, with everything else going on, I think it's very possible that receipts weren't entered. Or I'm sorry.
Or months down the road.
Or were entered,
down the road.
or were entered in a wrong time period,
Or to the
or
wrong
entered.
account.
there should be a tracking system for that.
There should, but what's unfortunate is because the work wasn't being done timely in the midst of a conversion, in the midst of trying to do this chart of accounts conversion, which adds a whole nother level.
It was a perfect storm.
It is a perfect storm. So really, to me, the question is, do you dig into it? Do you dig into it on a forensic side and look for embezzlement, which it sounds like you did. I just haven't seen that. Do you dig into, keep searching and searching for what made up the difference, which you could probably find it, but how much will that cost you?
Can
Or
we,
do you put controls in place to prevent it from happening again and move
Which has
forward?
been
Which is-
implemented in my office. I have created check and balances system that did not exist in that office for the past decade. There are more efficient ways of daily tasks being processed, double check and triple checked. Deposits going to the bank daily, that wasn't happening in the past, was being done. Cash outs were prior to me, my administration cash outs were only happening once every few weeks. It is now done daily. Again, improvements in that office are being made every day, and I'm striving to make it the best office possible.
Can we get a copy of that? Did they put that in writing that they don't believe that this was fraud?
I only received a verbal from the forensic. Tim, I don't know that we did receive anything in writing.
I don't recall.
Do you recall hearing that? Did they?
I do.
speak to
That's
you?
the first question we asked when we were uncovering the issue. Do we have a fraud issue? First question we asked out of the gate. That's the first issue they addressed with us. I'm confident there's no fraud. I am confident that it's an issue concerning accounting and what spreadsheet did things get entered onto? When did it get entered? That's all this. This is ends up being more or less an accounting exercise and not fraud. I'm absolutely convinced we're not dealing with a fraud case.
What number did they come up with?
Who's they and when?
The other firm that you're discussing right now
Yes,
with
They
this,
reported just a second ago, they came up with something like a $5,000.
It was 6,000
Yeah,
ish is I think what he told
they
me.
came up with a $6,000 difference and you came up with 71,000? And we paid them a lot of money.
and what number you came up with last year was in that 6,000? Yeah.
5,883.
So again, I think we've got some issues just with the spreadsheets and where the numbers are being entered. And probably we're closer to that 5,000 or 6,000 number than we are 71,000. But the fact that we opened Pandora's box, here we are. We're trying to resolve it. And I think the question then is, are we spinning our wheels now? Are we wasting money chasing something that may or may not even exist? You've had two professional accounting firms look at it and
I don't disagree with you,
Sort
but
that
going back to the general public and saying we're missing $71,000.
I think that would be a misstatement. I don't think we're missing $71,000. We just can't find it in the accounting of where the numbers aren't adding up. So is it entered twice? Is it not entered at all someplace? That we
Is it
don't know.
Entered
The
once down the road.
money coming in has been accounted for.
It's the money going out that's
It's
off.
just our ability to reconcile
To
all
find
of
the
the different
needle in the
funds.
haystack.
Yeah.
I do agree with Tim in that I think the likelihood is that it's an accounting issue. It's not actual cash missing. I just could never put, I would never sign my name to that without doing an investigation. I'm just saying that I think the likelihood with everything I've seen is it's an accounting transactional error. Something was not entered correctly or at all or twice. We
Okay,
found so many errors like that throughout the audit, but it's not possible for us to find every single one, but we found many.
I have talked with Tim periodically about progress with Maynard. And it's still ongoing, I understand. I just talked to Karen yesterday
Yesterday.
about this same thing. And we started, this was not a whim to just look this up. The Department of Treasury came here in the past
Correct.
administration. And they made the recommendations, we should dive into this.
Mhm.
They saw problems. And we went with that. I think we keep going with it. Yeah, I think we continue with it and not just write off 71,000 of misstatements or whatever. Now, I'm happy to hear that we're not in a fraud state, but I still think it'd be nice to dive a little deeper and come up with,
How?
well, Maynard will do it. I think Maynard will do it. As they're working through it, they'll find those, if it is double or it's missing or it, you know, I know that in previous years, how many times, and Karen can back me up, that we paid bills 6 months into the next fiscal year because somebody didn't produce the bill in the fiscal year it was supposed to be.
They came up, what do you mean have them do it?
Well, we
already have
hired
them done it.
Leonard to look into the dealings of the previous administration and how bookwork was handled.
So you want to pay them more?
I want
I
to
wanna
continue to
continue
work
with
with
them.
them. Yes,
Yeah.
I don't feel like the problem's been resolved. I want to continue to work with them.
I agree.
Again, they have new staffing. They're assigning an employee to me in April. So yeah, I think once I have a dedicated person who can be here for 2 or 3 days a week, not once or twice a month, that good progress can be made to resolve issues.
Okay, so I guess I misunderstood. It sounded like you were very dissatisfied with them
No, I'm
up
not.
till this point.
I'm disappointed but I don't think it's necessarily their fault. Like every business is experiencing staff shortages. And I think that is what happened with Maynard over the year. Tim and I have had conversations about it. I think they were short-staffed after Eric Smith, their employee that was assigned to me, left their firm. I didn't get the attention that I needed. They didn't have the staff to dedicate to me to complete the task list that I assigned to them. Number one being the checkbook. So I would like to continue to work with them. I want the person assigned to me in April and be able to have them here 2 or 3 days a week where they can focus on it, not just 1 or 2 days a month with weeks in between. So good progress can be made.
So how much more money are we looking at paying them?
I can't answer that at this time.
So you want to continue having them come, but we just paid another auditor to do something very similar that found things wrong with what they did. I mean, so there's just some of this, I guess I'm not understanding.
We're paying Stevenson Company to do our annual audit.
Correct.
That's, yeah, we have to do that. Now, Maynard was not something we had to do,
Correct,
but it was recommended for us to do it.
correct.
I don't think they're just completed yet. Now, I think we're into, I think I don't think we're, Tim, we agreed to a certain amount of money, and I don't think we're beyond that yet, are we?
Well, you've had a couple of different engagements, but then we did the internal control audit. That's finished. We're not into any or accruing any more expense with that. The review of the financial statements that we're talking about here is being conducted through the treasurer, and I'm not sure which fund it is, but there is a specific fund that the treasurer controls, and that's where they're being paid out of.
Okay.
And I don't know, I don't think we have a cap. I mean, it's more or less as we need them, we pay them their rate.
We're doing this on tax reversion fund,
Yes, out of my tax reversion
Right.
fund.
which is pretty
And
healthy.
The new person, yes, it's in very healthy condition financially, and the person that they are assigning to me is going to be at a lower rate than the principal from the accounting firm. So this person that they're assigning will be less costly and will be able to commit the time to this project that's needed. So yes, I would like to continue to work with them until I have the books I want to have.
Jen, if you want, so we can ask for some cost estimates from this company of how much further you want to pay, but I'm in favor of paying for it. I think that we deserve to know the forensic answer, and I think the public does too.
I agree with you 100%. I would like a more thorough update on, can you put that on the committee of the whole on them as a whole, what they've been doing, what we're looking at them doing?
Ken, are you available?
I will be at your next committee of the whole meeting, absolutely. Are you asking for Maynard to be there?
No, I just from an employee standpoint, from your guys' standpoint, again, I didn't know there was issues.
Let's have Maynard come. And they can explain their.
It'd be nice if we knew the questions to ask them. So how about if we talk first to the elected officials, department heads, and find out where the problems are and what our plan is, and then bring them into the next meeting.
Okay, but I already
And
got
you should
one.
know that I am a dedicated treasurer and I am on a path to make that office the best office it could be.
I don't
And to
doubt
be the
that.
best treasurer I can be.
I don't doubt that. You need the tools to do that. And,
I do
and
need
we
the
don't know
tools
the
to do
questions to ask unless we know the problems.
Okay. And feel
So-
free to stop by and see me anytime. My door is always open. Come and talk to me. I will definitely bring you up to date daily. Stop and see me whenever. Communication is key to every great
is.
operation. So stop and see me.
Agreed.
Okay,
Continue.
thank you.
I'm moving past cash. Are we good? Okay,
Yeah,
so financial statement prep and the bank recs were the two material weaknesses that we reported on. The next level down is a significant deficiency. So a significant deficiency, similar to a material weakness, is saying it's reasonably possible something could go wrong. But we don't believe it would be material to the financial statements. And we did have a significant deficiency in regard to payroll tracking in two different areas. The first was with comp time being tracked and used in the sheriff's department and the jail. What we did was we selected 5 employees between the jail and the sheriff's department and then 1 month. And we looked at timesheets and daily logs and everything to make sure that everything was lining up and that it was making sense. We did not have any issues at all between what was being paid and what was being shown in their daily logs and on the schedules. But where we did have issue is that the comp time is currently tracked in a manual notebook, a manual concept of a ledger. And with 2 out of the 5 people we tested that they used their comp time, neither one was actually deducted in the book. So I tend to believe that it was because it was the same week, they got missed, that somebody forgot to go in and update that book. I really think it's important that we're not using manual hand ledgers, but we're using computerized software, and that everything payroll related is being handled centrally through the clerk's office. I think that's really important. I do understand that there's new software that's been purchased and that's in the process of being implemented. So I'm hoping that this corrects itself, but I thought it was important to make you aware of it. The other issue similarly is sick and vacation time in the courts. It was not being handled centrally through the clerk's office, but it was being handled through the courts themselves. So we decided we needed to test both courts and how they were handling that time. And with probate court, they had really good documentation. We were able to test it. We had no issues. On the district court side, we were not able to test any actual activity. All we were able to receive from them was a handwritten ledger of what balances were. So we couldn't test it at all.
Why?
That it was not provided to us.
How come?
Because it's the courts and they decided not to provide it.
Is that legal?
I'll just stand by my previous statement.
What?
It was the courts and
If
they
it-
decided not to.
If
provide
it would have been a material, if potentially the dollar amount we're talking about would have been material to the financial statements, we would have had to have disclaimed our opinion on the audit as a scope limitation. So that should answer your question that no, it's not legal, because scope by definition with an audit, you have to disclose anything that's financial to us that would be required for an audit. But in the grand scheme of things, the number of employees we're talking about, it wouldn't be material. So we just included it as a finding.
Doesn't matter if there's 1 employee or if there's 30 employees. If they had to do it, they should have to do it.
I agree. I'm just saying I didn't have to display my opinion. I was still able to give you an unmodified opinion, which is required by the state. So I'm just recommending that it's done centrally through your clerk's office. Nothing payroll should be being handled separately. It needs to be central, and I'm really hoping this new system that you have is going to correct all of that.
Can we put that on the committee of the whole? Because
We can, but
That's
I can tell
absurd.
you, the system will correct it. Both of these findings will be totally addressed.
so, I mean, there was 2 out of 5. I mean, so do you go back and do you audit? Not saying we're going to, do you go back and audit all of this?
You could ask the sheriff to do that. I think it's probably time that would be better spent doing other work. But resting assured that having worked closely with the building of the system that we will have in place here by the end of this year, both the comp time issue and the sick vacation time issue will be addressed. They will be centrally located in the clerk's office. All of the approvals will go through there. Comp time will automatically be deducted when it's
Yeah.
supposed to be. Sick and vacation time accruals will be known and will happen regularly. And it will all be automatic. We don't have to worry about anybody overlooking anything. It will all be there captured in the one spot. We'll be able to print out reports and showing you next year exactly how much sick and vacation time everybody has.
We're gonna wait till next year to implement this, correct?
We are in the process of implementing as we speak.
Are we gonna get kickback or resistance from the courts?
I don't think so. I think we've cleared that hurdle. There were some concerns about whether or not all employees would be required to check in at the time clock, where they don't now because they're salaried. They do not. Again, I believe we have all that addressed. Time will tell if somebody has another issue they want to bring up, but as far as I can tell right now, we're on track. We'll have these things resolved.
And I would think it would take some responsibility off of them.
It'll make it very easy, not only for the approving supervisors, but each employee will be able to log on to their own homepage and see how much time they have for vacation this year, or if they have comp time, how much time that is. They'll see it in real time.
So how have they been being paid for that? Say they want to use.
Again, I'm not involved in the day-to-day activities, but I understand that, maybe the undersheriff could explain how they do the comp time. But there's a ledger there. They add and take comp time as it's accrued and report that through the timesheets when they go to the clerk.
So it's written on
Problem,
the time sheets?
It's, I don't have comp time in any of my approved, so.
On the payroll sheets, there are lines that have comp earned and comp used. That's on payroll sheets that are submitted to the clerk, and then we keep track in a binder book as far as the comp time that's earned and used. And when we found her in the audit, there was 2 out of the 5, I made an error.
Which can happen.
Yeah, I did subtract time that had been used and we pulled from payroll sheets compared to the employee.
That can't be good practice.
It's just time consuming and it's, you get distracted, you're doing handwritten stuff. This new system is gonna be good for eliminating that. It's gonna be all in that computer system. So one, at the same time, and 2, it's gonna be a lot more trackable. You won't have that manual mistakes sometimes have. Does that answer the question?
It needs to be in the program.
Yeah, it does. It
Yes.
does need to be in the program, much like. the
And I don't think we should wait till next year. I think the sooner the better.
Like I said, it's in process.
Testing
Yeah.
right now.
Can we do a policy? Do you guys do the same thing? Do you keep it in a ledger?
Oh,
No,
Oh.
we
That's,
are accurate.
do we have to do a policy and a procedure on this?
No,
We don't.
we don't. It's, again, just the manner in which we're recording. We're going from a manual system that's uncoordinated to a single coordinated automated system. So we're hopefully eliminating the manual mistakes. Will mistakes still be made? Yeah, probably. But this is certainly going to help decrease the possibility for the distraction that may occur, or for an independent sick and vacation accrual that we have no clue what it is. No, it'll all be in one system. We'll be able to call it up again in real time.
So what about them not cooperating? I'm sure that wasn't a fun experience or a pleasant experience, and I don't know how this works. So what happens since they didn't cooperate? Again, how is that fair to the other departments? For one, it's our county audit. Is there a policy and a procedure if I see you kind of huffing here.
Well, you got this whole separation of powers issue, and this break into the lecture. You've got your 3 branches of government. We really have 2 here, where the legislative and the executive are one branch. You have the courts. The courts operate independent of the county outside of the budget process. The court could say, we're going to take over all of our payroll responsibilities, and we would have to allow that because the court has the authority to do that. I don't think that's wise. I don't think it's efficient, but they could do it. I think what we're dealing with here is a transitional issue where you may have an employee or 2 who's suspect as to, well, why do you want this? Or should I have to give it? I don't know what the thinking is. It just didn't get to the auditor, okay? This system will correct that. If the court decides later, 3, 4, 5 years down the road, we want to track and do our own payroll, the board can say, fine, we're not going to provide any additional funding for that, but you go ahead because you don't have authority to tell the court no when it comes down to managing the court. Now, I don't want to leave anybody with the impression here that we are at odds with the court. I think we get along very well with the court. I speak with the court administrators all the time, dealing with policies, making sure that we're all on the same operating understanding. And I expect that once we've got this system in place, any question about how we're tracking payroll is going to be resolved. And this will be much more convenient even for the judges to be able to keep track of the court activities and how we're paying people, what their accruals are and how they're accrued. And they'll see it every payroll because they're pushing yes when it comes time to saying, is this the proper amount to pay our people? Physically or saying yes. They'll hit the button, it'll go into the system, checks will be written. It can't be made, I don't think, any easier. And I think both of these issues will be 100% addressed when we're here next year.
I just don't remember ever hearing the lack of cooperation. Maybe have you reported that in the past 3-4 years?
It's been a while. There wasn't, I can't even quantify, but it's been a long time. We did have this issue before. And it was with a different department at the time. And so Gary Clacking was acting as administrator at the time. And so he sent out, I believe, a memo or a letter to all departments, making them aware that, because we wrote it up in the audit. So then for the next year, he sent out a letter to all the department heads to make them aware that all departments needed to cooperate with the audit. And that anything less than cooperation is a scope limitation on our work. If it would have been a material area, I would have pushed harder. I would have gotten the judge involved, but because it wasn't, and I knew it was going to be corrected with the software, we wrote the comment and moved on.
I understand the limitation of your audit, but I agree with Jenny. I mean, you have to question, especially in this day and age, we're manually putting things in notebooks. Come on, no way. You know, there's just, people got to take personal responsibility and start changing some things, the way you operate. That's not the way you operate. I don't think it is. And I think it's worth asking about, and I think it's worth a discussion about. You know, this just, we do these automated things to protect everybody involved, whether it's the person putting it in and the person that benefits from it or whatever.
Person writing the check, right?
Person writing the check, yeah. But yeah, we need to. But I think as far as a resolution for everybody to follow, when we passed that we're putting a time system in, that was the resolution. That covers it. We already said we're putting this timekeeping system in. This is it.
You mean the time clock?
Well, the whole software package.
Oh, I disagree with you, but that's okay. Go ahead.
Well, we passed that. We would put this in that.
We
and
did.
When we said
did.
that, everybody was going to be included. I mean, Brad led the charge there, and he wanted everybody included in it. That was in the motion. And, you know, we weren't gonna run separate little entities here and there and separate. There might be separations of how somebody gets paid or, you know, or this comp time issue and things like that, but no, everybody be included. And I think we've already made that resolution by doing.
It just doesn't sound like we're utilizing that software to the,
Well, we're just in the
It's just in
testing stage
just
right
in the
now.
testing stage.
Just
right now,
trying it out.
so.
okay.
Yeah,
Again, it's nice getting updates and hearing all of this information.
yeah, well, we heard,
We meet once a week.
right. I think
Been
I
talking
asked this
about this
question
for
a
quite some
month
time.
ago to Tim in the meeting. I asked how we were coming along and he said that, stated again, the timeline. He's got a timeline.
And Breck's been keeping
Yeah,
us,
we've been
Breck's the one who talked to us about
testing
it.
it.
Yeah.
Even said the testing was going good and we were probably escalating our timeline.
I have heard that.
Okay, okay, I think it's been out there, Jen, really.
Go ahead, Cindy. Thank you.
Okay. Next is just other comments, and I just have two. These do not constitute a material weakness or a significant deficiency, but just informational recommendations. And I'm gonna work my way backwards because budget, we already talked about. We already discussed that at length. That was just the recommendation of actually incorporating it into the software. The other was with timely disbursements of taxes. The law does state that taxes that you receive on behalf of another entity have to be paid out within 10 business days of the 1st and the 15th of the month. And in our testing, there was one significant payment that didn't get paid out in that timeline. Again, I'm gonna think it's probably just a matter of new software, new people, changes, but we are required to disclose that because that is a compliance issue. But that was corrected, and while we were here during the audit, that was paid out. Any other questions on any of the findings?
Very good.
Last year, just to follow up, last year we had comments, the financial statement prep still there. The timely bank reconciliations, I did say progress was made. I know that we had a big dollar amount we had to talk about this year, but I've seen how hard the treasurer's office is working at correcting it. And that alone is progress. So I am pleased with that. Tax receivable subsidiary ledgers, last year we had an issue with the BSNA taxes receivable, and then the ledgers that were being used in Pontum were not lining up, but now that everything's on the same page, that has been corrected. And then we also had concerns a year ago during the COVID times that the purchasing policy was not always being followed, but I know that that's been corrected and that a new purchasing policy was approved. Questions for me?
What do you, that last comment there, budget control, what did you mean by
That was related to the fact that on the system, your original budget and your final budget were the same.
Oh, okay, we already discussed that.
Yes. My contact information is there, as is Nathan's. Feel free to reach out to either one if you have questions.
I know just a quick question for you, Cindy. I think Commissioner Scott had made the comment that we hadn't seen you guys in and out of here as much as we did previously. Is that, did you spend less time on this audit
No,
because
we
of
were here
staffing issues?
Nope, there was one less person, but we were physically here actually a day longer than we've been in the past, longer days, and I think you probably didn't see us because we were working so hard and not leaving our
Burn the
room.
midnight oil.
Yes, but no, we were here a full 3 weeks.
Thank you. Okay, guys, item 8, unfinished business.
Do we need to make a motion to accept the auditor's report?
Got that under item.
Coming up.
Okay, sorry.
Commissioner Serbrook.
Oh, motion's for
Any
that.
unfinished business?
If I'd read the agenda, I'd answer my own question.
Item 9, administrators report.
Well, I'm going to back you up to a little bit to unfinished business. I did want to give you an update on the school resource officer conversation that has been brought to you by the sheriff for a couple of meetings. I was able to finally sit down with the sheriff. We got our schedules to coordinate and talk this through. The agreement that we've been working with in the past, that boilerplate, frankly, is not, does not meet the standard that we should be expecting. So that's going to be forwarded to our attorney to look at, probably reconstruct in many ways. I did talk to the sheriff about my concerns on the cost and how we calculate that, and that's going to have to be revisited too. What we're dealing with here is just the convoluted nature of county government, where the sheriff was able to, I assume at invitation of the school, go out and talk about the school resource officer concept and how it would work. But at that point, we were not in any kind of a negotiation position on the cost because you, as the board, weren't represented in that conversation. So that is a base that we still are going to need to cover. So it's, again, one of those works in process. We'll hopefully here within a short time have a contract for you to look at. But that's where it is. We haven't dropped it by any stretch, but there's work that needs to be done. Any questions on that? Moving on, just a couple of other things. I did attend the MSU ARPA meeting yesterday. It was a good meeting. A lot of information that about things that we've talked about here about the different silos of spending. But in that conversation, we were able to talk to our local communities who were there about making the declaration that their ARPA funds are in fact lost revenue. And I was able to provide them with a boilerplate resolution that they could pass to make that declaration official in their minutes. What that will do for our townships is make the reporting requirements much less onerous. They will all, just as we do, have a report that's due at the end of April. If they pass the resolution, that report can say we have taken you up on your rules. We're under $10 million, so this is all lost revenue, and that'll be the only report they have to file. They don't have to worry about meeting criteria in any of those other silos. So I think they were pretty happy to hear that. MSU provided an awful lot of other information as well that I think the townships will find a lot useful. I think they'll be a lot more comfortable moving forward with using those dollars. We, of course, have our special meeting tomorrow. I've already loaded on the Google Drive the projects, so you'll see each of the projects that's been proposed in that list that you've seen over the last few months. Most of those, it looks ominous. There's about 36 projects on there. Most of those are single page. And I did pull all of the projects that were in the capital improvement plan so that you don't have to open the plan. You'll see the individual projects as they were included in there. So you'll have the entire list to consider for our conversations tomorrow. And then lastly, just update, we have our regular department head meeting next week. We will have Mike Bowers coming in to talk about the security issues that were mentioned, I think, at the security committee meeting. I think is where we collared him to come in and talk to us, but also have the opportunity to review those other policies that will be on the committee agenda next week, and particularly that travel reimbursement policy, which I think it's pretty self-explanatory, but just good to touch base with departments and hit those concerns too. So we'll have that ready to go for your conversation next Thursday. That's it.
Yep. Item 10, elected officials and department head reports.
Brett Gildner, Ogemaw County Clerk. I would like to report that I did buy local. I am getting ready to do the big jury questionnaire mailing. So I needed 2 types of envelopes. So I went with Office Central and Kathy Collins. Do my big order. Did it? You're welcome.
Welcome. Hey, it's
That's
for the community.
Next, Tom, do you want anything?
Actually, I guess I do. Coming up is the last part of the phone server transition, where we will be switching from our current provider to the new provider, which was approved last year. It's taken that long, but I'm thinking that's going to take place next week. We'll have a little bit of downtime, but thinking half-hour tops. So we're doing it first thing in the morning. I asked before 8 a.m. and after that takes place, that whole entire project, about $60,000 will be complete.
Treasurer?
Karen Piglovsky, your Ogemaw County Treasurer. Our office is currently working on township settlement of taxes. I wanted to mention the Misha Mihab program that I did send out to all of you. I do have several taxpayers who are utilizing that program. We're waiting for a response from Mihab, but I'm hoping to have assistance for a handful of people in our community through that program of relief. I've also collaborated with Jeff Nichols at the Veterans Department to assist a disabled veteran with keeping his home from foreclosure. And I want to state again how dedicated I am to this position. I'm passionate. I set my standards high. I have created more cross-checks and efficient daily tasks that are cross-checked within the office that didn't exist in the past. And I have a great staff now that are dedicated to their positions and are working hard and striving for a better treasurer's office in the future. I promise you that. Thank you.
Thank you. Sheriff?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Brian Gilbert, Ogemaw County Sheriff. I don't have much to pass along. But right now we have, you should have a copy of our grants. We have 13 active grants in play right now. Deputy Better's been really active with that. We appreciate that. And we did get one grant delivered to us. It's the MSA grant for $5,000. That's going to be applied to weapons and or body armor. So I did get the call here last week. We are going to be successfully going to get that $5 grand. So it's on its way if we haven't got it.
We have to vote to accept that when it comes. Tim?
Yes.
Okay, just let us know when it gets here so we can vote on it.
Absolutely. So that was great news. I just want to touch base just briefly on the ORB. I did send that out, the draft form to you folks. Should got that. I'm hoping to discuss that next week at our COW meeting and go over the issues there that we came up with. Okay.
Thank you.
And I met with Superintendent Joe Carrera, who's behind me, regarding the school liaison. We're hoping to get that off the ground. I met with Tim on Tuesday, and we're going to send this to our legal team. And hopefully we can get this moved forward. I see Joe is here, so I'm sure that he'll probably want to come up here and maybe make himself available to any questions for concerning Whitmore Prescott. So something that we really need over there. And that's all I have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Pereira, do you want to go up now and add to that?
Certainly, thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm available for questions if anyone has any. Officer or Sheriff Gilbert and I had a longstanding relationship and work well together. And he approached me about this in December, and we started having conversations. So it's been an interesting process, and look forward to hopefully getting something in place for next year, if not this year. Any questions?
Agreed. This is something that's very, very much needed. We just got to make sure we take the correct steps to make this happen.
Certainly.
I don't have any right now.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other elected officials or department heads on the phone? Nope. We got item 11, manners from the floor. Item 12, motions for adoption. A motion to accept the fiscal year 2021 audit report should be offered.
I will make that motion at this point in time.
We have a motion from Commissioner Serbuk.
I'll second.
We have a support from Commissioner Scott. Is there any discussion? Roll call vote.
Mark Serbrook,
Yes.
Ron Vaughn,
Yes.
Jenny David,
Yes.
Craig Scott.
Yes.
Item 13, committee reports. Commissioner Scott.
I have attended Gloucester Township. They voted to prime their roads 3 times this year. They set some board salaries. They reviewed their budget meeting that they had. They had a Parks and Rec meeting yesterday. Our showers at the RV park are now rebuilt. Good shape. We got to put a furnace in over there. We awarded a fence bid at Nature Park, and we're gonna have a Nature Park fundraiser spaghetti dinner at the Clear Lake Bar, April 2nd in the afternoon. So you don't have to come hungry, just bring a lot of money with you.
I saw that advertised.
Okay.
It's on the bulletin board here too.
Yes, it is.
Oh, nice.
So I haven't, because of the way the month fell, I haven't had any other township meetings yet. Oh, road commission, I was at their last meeting. They have a new road foreman, and they were setting his salary and benefit package and everything. And they give an update on their salt winter. I think they were about 85% used on salt.
Wow.
That was last week. That's all.
Commissioner Serbrook.
Attended District Health Department #2 with Commissioner Vaughn. They had their budget audit review with Scott, and a clean bill of health. Procedurally, there were some issues, specifically in regards to Open Meetings Act, because we've been allowing voting via Zoom by other board members, so there's ongoing issues there. I think hopefully they'll get resolved. What is traditionally, what's happened is that we've met as an entire board in person in January. February, we didn't. And so there was an issue because board members were on Zoom and voted solutions.
What committee is this? Oh,
District Health #2.
okay. I'm sorry.
Yeah, there were specifically 3 different things, and one of them had to be a fee schedule increase. So yeah, that's been rescinded from what I understand. I had a conversation last night with an individual, and I was told that the fee schedule has been rolled back to the original until that matter gets resolved. So Commission on Aging, again, audit report from Cindy again, Cleanville Health there. It claims, and then last night I had a West Branch Township, and West Branch Township tells me that they were at 94% tax collection. They are applying for a USDA grant, looking to buy the West Branch Steel property there on Business Loop, 76, to use as a park. They're going to, I believe they said that they'd probably get an answer about June, where they can, USDA provides them with grant monies to be able to purchase that property. And the DDA, I believe, is going to make it into a park. They awarded 2 licenses for recreational marijuana facilities in the township. Both of them are going to be brand new construction. One of them is going to be located on M55 between the Secretary of State's office and AutoZone, where Town Club used to be when the non-tornado went through and leveled that building. There's going to be one built there, and then there's going to be one built just south of the old Sears store on the Business Loop. So if anybody's curious about what's going on at 55 and Dam Road by Griffin there, they're building a maintenance facility for their trucks.
Griffin is,
Yes, that's what all that digging is going on there and stuff, so it's maintenance.
looks like it's gonna be big.
Yeah, they gave the size, and it's like 100 feet by something. I don't remember exactly what it was. But that's it.
Commissioner Vaughn?
Like as Commissioner Scott said, we had Parks and Rec. Did get the showers redone. We had some problems. We had some lines freeze in the bathrooms. I guess they weren't winterized properly, and got them all repaired except for one. Still got to be worked on. We got the new furnace ordered, and again, the fencing at the deer refuge. The health department, like Commissioner Serbrook said, we voted on, I think it was 3 resolutions in the February meeting. The commissioners, because we're in 4 counties, 3 of the counties meet by Zoom. And then we found out later that we couldn't do that, so they were rescinded. I did talk to the head of the health department. She's trying to find a central locate for all of us to start meeting monthly. It'll probably be in Hale, I'm guessing, is what she's looking into. So those will have to be revoted on in March, the meeting there. Had 911, 4 dispatchers are in training. One will be finishing up here, I believe, in the next week or 2. And they've got one, she'll be retiring after 15 years. And that's all I've got.
Thank you. I attended Richland. It was a quick meeting. Talked a little bit about the roads. The campground, no issues going on over there. Attended the ARPA meeting last night by Zoom, actually. There was a couple townships that were there. It was informative. There was some roundtable discussion. There were some PowerPoints. It was some enjoyable conversation. It was a couple hours long.
I have to say the morning meeting, just having the group there, and it wasn't a huge group, but to watch the interaction among the townships, and you guys are doing a transfer station and a compactor, and I mean, it was just great to see that exchange happening. So I think it was a good session beyond what its purpose was.
It is nice. I don't think they haven't reinitiated the MTA meetings in the area. So they haven't been together now for quite some period of time. Logan Township. I attended that meeting. They're really struggling over there, and that's the township that I live in. Actually, they almost called the police. They threatened to call the police a couple times. Meeting starts at 7 p.m. and I left, I want to say around 9, and it didn't get over till 10:30. They were 45 minutes trying to approve some minutes. I came in and talked to, I don't know if I talked to you in person or talked to you on the phone about this. township's really struggling over there. It's aggressive. It's over really anything and everything. They got 5 board members. And they got 2 and 2 and 1 gentleman that's in the middle. They need some assistance coming down to how their minutes are documented, how they're typed up, what guidelines they're following, whether it's parliamentarian, whether it's, and I'm not even remotely exaggerating. It was 7:45 before they came to an agreement to approve the minutes. It's very frustrating. So unfortunately, they're not getting a lot accomplished at this point in time because there's so much disagreement. Even they're disagreeing on how to appoint fire board members. I'm open to suggestions as far as things I can take back to them. Unfortunately, again, this is the township that I live in. Pretty well attended. I want to say between 10 to 20 members typically in the audience. I've never seen anything like it. Do you have any input for me that I can take back to them?
Well,
Board has been the same for a while, hasn't it?
Pardon me?
The board has been the same for a while.
They did, one of the trustees did step out because all of this was kind of evolving. So there is this new gentleman who's doing a pretty good job, and he's kind of the guy in the center. The other 4, yes, have been there for a little period of time.
I can reach out to the clerk.
I would recommend John Arnheim from the gentleman that's doing the ARPA meeting that you were on Zoom watching.
Yep.
He has come and helped us out here. We did back my first term, we did a retreat for us commissioners where we just went to the airport. It was
Yeah, I
brought up.
remember you talking about that.
Yeah, it was brought up that, some counties go out of town for retreats and get a lot of business done. Well, the suspicion was from everybody that we were gonna go out of town and pull a fast one on somebody. So we went to the airport and had a big crowd show up over there because,
I remember
didn't
that.
want the commissioners pulling a fast one on them. But we brought John Arnheim in, paid him. And it's not much because he's working for MSUE. But he was able to facilitate a meeting, and I got a lot out of it. A couple others didn't, but I did.
I mean, I definitely don't want to overstep here. I think primarily it's definitely the
It's a
clerk
good
and
suggestion.
the clerk and the supervisor really need to sit down with a individual, I want to say mediator. Because that,
John's a
whew,
an expert in communicating in a municipal atmosphere. MTA has people like this too. MTA, I probably have a team that'll come in and evaluate a township.
part of the problem is some of them are calling the MTA to get guidance. Some of them are calling their lawyer to get guidance. And again, for one, this is my township. For 2, I'm also the commissioner for this area, and trying not to overstep but unfortunately, the people in this township are definitely going to be the ones to suffer for this because there is not much getting accomplished. And I think there's definitely going to be some legal issues going forward, along with, it is getting very aggressive, verbally aggressive. There's yelling, there's cursing, it's bad. It's very, very bad.
Well, if I personally, for me to you, go in, say, I'm taking my commissioner hat off. I am a citizen, a resident of this township, and I don't think you can overstep. Because
Okay.
you're a taxpayer of that township. I don't think you can overstep that.
I don't think the last 3 meetings I've stayed late enough, and typically I stay till 9 to get to public comment to that point, but that's definitely, I do agree with that. Because again, I was hoping that they would try to resolve this on their own, but it's definitely not happening.
Usually it's just a big topic that really gets going, but I understand you've got a cultural issue.
It did start with garbage. Garbage
Yeah, I
pickup,
can
and
tell you how
it
that
has
can-
evolved from
I can
garbage.
tell you how that can get. They can get stinky.
Anyways, I think that's all I have to report, but I will definitely, and I talked to Tim a little bit about that, so I may reach out to two of them and see if they're able and willing to sit down and with either Tim or somebody for some guidance, because we need to work on some resolutions here. I think that's all. I didn't attend Mills because I had CPR training, and was that last night? The ARPA. Huh? Yeah. No, I had the ARPA last night, though. That was Tuesday night. Tuesday, today's Thursday. I had CPR training. I think that's it for me. General public comment. Item 14. This is the last area for public comment. Any subject matter applies. 1, state your name for the record. 2, speak only to the chairperson. 3, stand behind the podium when speaking. 4, limit comments to 3 minutes or fewer. And 5, follow the direction of the chairperson when speaking. Public comment. Sir, come on up.
Hey, guys, listen. Hi, I'm Mike Benfield with M33 Access. Just wanted to update you guys on Rose Township. Requested me to come and sit down with them and go over areas they were interested in and putting fiber optic in, and went ahead and moved forward with their area that they wanted done. Also, Clacking Township, same thing. They reached out to me and said, hey, come and talk to us. We want to know more. And they broke down a bunch of roads that they were specifically wanting done. And so they moved forward with that one as well. There is other townships that are interested in doing the same thing, and I am in the process of talking with them to figure out those areas, what they want to do. So that is my update for you guys. Thank you very much.
Thanks for the update. Any other public comment? Sir, come on up. State your name.
I am Matthew Kowalski,
Hi.
and so nice to be here. Thank you for your service. I'm an addiction specialist. I moved into the area from Oakland, California, and I'm great with mental health. I have a high level of healing consistency, and they do most of the work, and also with young people being criminalized for a diagnosable drug disorder. And I'm just here to say, I'm here to help in any way I can. You guys know anywhere that needs that kind of service or awakening or help to, facilitate community members being brought back to the fold instead of being displayed as criminalized behavior. I'm all about that, and I'd love to be of service.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other public comment? Any public comment on the phone? No public comment on the phone?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. I'll support that. We'll be adjourned at 11:07. All in favor, say yes.
Yes.
Opposed? I'm gonna remember that.